For all of you joining right now, we're just trying to give it a minute or two to let people flood in and get as many people in here as possible right before we get started. So in about a minute or two, I'll give the introduction. Alrighty. So hello everyone, and welcome to Get to Know George, Masonry's AI system, presented by Dan Camus from the MCAA. Right now, everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, or you can raise your hand, and we're gonna have time at the end to go over those questions that you guys have, and Dan will be able to answer them for you. We appreciate you all for being here, and without further ado, please welcome Dan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is something very exciting for us to share with you today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Camus. I am the Director of Content here at the MCAA. I've been here for about 9 years, working on things like Masonry Magazine and now our AI system. I'm joined off screen by our brilliant Director of Technology, Jason Blake, who is the developer for us. He's our Director of Technology. So one of the main reasons I'm very excited to share our developments with you today is because I'm very bad at keeping secrets. And our AI system, which we're calling George, is something we've been working on for 2 years. Jason will tell you he's been thinking about it for 7 years, but actively we've been working on it for 2 years. What we've done is create something that we feel is purpose-built and useful for the masonry industry and the professionals involved in the trade. This has been a team lift that started with our technology team and has now involved our content team. And in a little bit, I'll tell you why that's involved our content team, which is something you might not expect for artificial intelligence. We worked hand in hand to create these purpose-built assistants that live within the ecosystem, which we're calling George, named after George Miller, the first association executive of the MCAA. So what I'd kind of like to start with, and if you were at our mid-year meeting last month in August, you would have seen a version of this presentation. One of the reasons we've moved so quickly to develop an AI solution for the masonry industry is to prevent those who really are looking to deliver an inferior product at a high price to the stakeholders within the masonry industry, to cut them off before they're able to do that. Our system from the beginning will be purpose-built. It's not designed to generate a massive amount of money. It is designed to be a tool, the ultimate productivity tool for the industry. So a lot of places, which I call AI imposters, they will take something like ChatGPT, which is not what we're doing, and they'll slap it onto a pre-built solution and call it AI, and then they have a reason to charge you more money for it. So my word of warning is to not be fooled with these AI imposters. And part of what I'll do before I show you our system is talk to you a little bit about what good AI is. And I don't know why I'm not an outdoorsman, but I use the analogy of fishing. So bad AI or generic AI, those imposters that I've talked about, that's bad fishing. That's bad AI. It catches everything. You're going after bluefish and you've wound up with a jellyfish and an octopus and orange fish and nothing you wanted. The things you wanted are in there, but it's hard to decipher. You still have to do some work. Good AI is good fishing. You've caught the blue fish that you're looking for. And not many may know this, but there are really three variables that go into good fishing or good AI, and I'll talk about them a little bit now. The one that's off screen that I did not have a graphic for is what we call coaching here. This is a series of instructions that I liken to an employee handbook that can be upwards of 10,000 words. Some of our assistants have 10,000 word coaching instructions and a series of documents that are appended to them. So our assistants are trained to only use the information that we provide from trusted, reliable sources. They do not go to outside sources to get their information. So that series of coaching instructions is very important. Tied to those coaching instructions, kind of that employee handbook, which can also contain up to 2 GB of files per assistant, are two numerical values that are called top P and temperature. And we'll go back to the fishing analogy because it makes it easy, certainly for me to understand. The top P is at the front end, so that's the spot where you place your fishing net, where you choose to fish. You know the right answers, start here. Good AI is about the likelihood and probability of answers, reasoning like a human does. And by adjusting that top P value, you are lessening the likelihood of answers that it starts to look at. In the case of something like a more mathematical assistant, which we'll show, like our wall bracing assistant, there's really only one right answer on how to brace a wall safely and properly. So that value will be much lower for something that's more mathematical. For something that has room to be more creative, so something like email drafting, which we'll also show you in a minute, there's a higher value assigned to that. So that's at the beginning of the reasoning that the AIs do. Then there's temperature. So that's at the tail end of it. So you've caught all these bluefish, but what makes an acceptable bluefish? I don't want ones with yellow fins. I don't want ones that have purple stripes. This is the creativity at the other end of it. So these three variables are all things that we customize and calibrate for each purpose-built assistant that we create. These are all things that are different for each assistant. Something like a personal assistant is going to be very different than a mathematical formula assistant. And what we do is go through rigorous testing to get these calibrated prior to deploying them in a beta version. Um, so I sound like I know a lot about AI and that I've worked on this for a while, and it's only been about 2 years for me. So the way that I've taught myself about AI was to create the assistant that I never knew I needed. His name is Gomez. That's him. So say hello to him on the right. Um, by really creating an assistant for myself to make myself more efficient and productive, that's what's allowed me to really understand those three variables I just talked about. So in the case of Gomez, what he is trained on, he has every single email I've sent in 9 years from the MCAA. So it's about 13,000 emails. He can digest it in seconds and draft an email that's written exactly in the style I would write it in. If you've been to our office, you know that two of our walls in the conference room, which I'm looking at, are whiteboards that frequently have my scribbles all over them. Right now, I'm looking at my scribbles right now. So through coaching, I've been able to take photos of my handwriting and train him on how to understand my handwriting and then type it out. He can analyze large amounts of data. So I am a spreadsheet nerd and a pivot table nerd for all my Excel fans out there. He is able to do that much more quickly than I can, which allows me to really focus on the high level decisions to make rather than the process of creating those tables and analyzing the data. He can help me edit using our AP style. So he has a reference document of the AP style guide that he can use to make adjustments to content that we create. He can generate images. So he created his own image, which any resemblance to me when I was 10 years younger and a lot skinnier is totally coincidental. and he can help me draft an outline for a talk on artificial intelligence. So he actually helped me with that. That's what allowed me and our team to really understand how to adjust those coaching variables that we talked about, the coaching documents, the coaching employee handbook, the top P and the temperature. That really allowed me to understand it in the context of creating purpose-built assistance for the masonry industry. And you will meet Gomez in a little bit. You won't get access to him because he's mine, but you'll get to see him in action in just a few minutes. To give you an idea, so branching out from creating the personal assistants that we did, these are some of the assistants that will live within the ecosystem we call George within the next few months. They're all done. They're just going through different levels of testing right now. Everything from estimating to document management to industry research and benchmarking. I won't read them all to you. I'll let you look at the screen for a moment. One of my favorites as we prepare to look back on our first 75 years is the assistant that will have quite literally every issue for the past 60 plus years of Masonry Magazine scanned and loaded into its knowledge. And in an instant, you can ask what was on the cover, what was the feature story in the 1965 issue of Masonry Magazine, and it will be able to share that with you. So there's a variety of uses, OSHA compliance, silica compliance. There's implications for everybody within the masonry industry, from the design community through the construction process to use this. And we'll show you, George, in a few minutes. So the result with these assistants is that it's something much more than a search engine. It is not Google, and it is definitely not ChatGPT. It's human-like, but it's not a human, so don't be afraid. I think we're at least 10 years away from being able to trust AI enough to even let it start doing things on its own. Um, our AI has been continuously improving from the first day. So 2 years ago when we started this, Jason told me the important thing is that we need to continue feeding the inputs and the things it learns back into itself. So we've been doing that from the first day. We've not lost any knowledge with it. I really believe that this is going to change the masonry industry. The difference with our assistance versus something like ChatGPT, ChatGPT has a tendency to be too positive and to try and answer questions too quickly. So it will give you an answer without having the authority to go back to you and ask follow-up questions. As you'll see in two of the demonstrations we'll do in just a moment, our AI, if it doesn't know the answers that it needs to properly find a solution to the problem that you pose for it, it will ask you, hey, I need to know these other things. That's not something ChatGPT typically does. And again, it's also trained on specific information, reliable sources related to the industry. So it's not a Google search. It's very different from both of those things. So now we've talked about the assistants themselves. So those are the purpose-built tools that live within the ecosystem that we call George. As we developed George, our three priorities were that it needed to be familiar, meaning that you could pick it up if you've just worked on a computer your whole life. You didn't need to install anything new. It was simple. It would do what you asked very quickly and very effectively, and it would be seamless. So anything that we felt would make you less productive within the system, we stripped out of it. So the result is George. This is what houses all of our purpose-built AIs. Jason would really like me to stress that this will run on any device that has a web browser and has a cellular or Wi-Fi connection, meaning if you have a 10-year-old iPad that still connects to Wi-Fi, this will run. This is not dependent on installing an app, although you can install the MCAA app and run it through that if you so choose. You can start a conversation through talk out in the field. It's a two-way talk system, and you can also type. You can start a conversation out in the field, tell the assistant, hey, when I'm back at the office, I'll upload the reference documents I'm talking about. Pick it up once you're back at your desk on your desktop. The thread will be right there, the conversation. You can pick it right up, So the limitations on the devices that can run this, there really are none, as long as you have a browser and you have an internet connection. Now we get to the fun part. We're going to do live demos. We're going to show you um, four live demos. The first will be Gomez. You'll get to learn about Gomez. We'll talk about industry specific Spanish translations. We'll show you our wall bracing assistant and our productivity assistant. So what I'm going to do now, if you'll bear with me, is I'm going to show you George. So actually, I went from our presentation right into George. So what you're looking at is a web-based operating system. This is George. Now I have my little note here that reminds me to tell you how customizable George is for every user. This is the part of the presentation where I stress the importance of having yourself and your entire team at your company loaded into the MCAA database. Right now, as we're in open beta, this is open to both members and non-members. I can't say that will always be the case, but right now, all that it's dependent on is you having a profile within the MCAA database, which those are free to create. So please do so if you haven't yet. Once you've created a profile or accessed your profile, I think Jason said certainly within the next 24 or 48 hours, we'll have everybody be able to access George. You will access it right from the database. You can bookmark this browser, you can bookmark this URL and access this at any time. This desktop that you're looking at is my personal desktop. So everybody in your team eventually will have a very different desktop. Somebody who works for the association is going to have a very different looking desktop than somebody who owns a masonry company, somebody who's a safety director at a masonry company, somebody who does estimating. Those shortcuts, these icons, these widgets, as we call them, are all customizable to everybody. This is just a web-based experience. So again, this will work, this will be this responsive as long as you have a good internet connection. You don't have to install anything proprietary to your device. So what we'll do, and this is very customizable, like I said, it functions like an operating system. You can set your desktop backgrounds, you can change your themes, you can drag attachments into this. So the way I actually work on this within the office is one of my screens is just George, the other screen is my usual desktop, and I'll drag things back and forth as I need them. Um, but this is very customizable to everybody. But again, it's dependent on you having an account with the MCAA in our database. So if you need help, please reach out to Justin, Jason, or myself, and we will help you get set up within the MCAA database so that you can start using this. So without further ado, we're going to first demonstrate Gomez. So when you open your assistant, this looks very familiar. It looks like a chat window. And you'll see a lot of our internal use assistants here on the left side. You won't have access to a lot of these right now. But what you'll do when you open it is this functions just like iMessage or Google Messages, things you're familiar with. You can create a thread. The thread or conversation is something that you will name it, that you'll remember it. It could be a project. It could be a topic that you're working on. Um, this one I'm going to call Say Hi Gomez. And like I said, for the purposes of this demonstration, just because it's virtual, I'm going to rely on the voice feature. I'm not going to subject you to my chicken finger typing right now. But what we'll do is do a quick demo of the voice capabilities, and then we'll move through our assistants. So hey, Gomez, I'm doing a presentation about George, which is the AI operating system where you and our other assistants live. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how we work together? And also make sure to say hi to everybody.
Interesting. Let me see. Hello, Dan. Of course, I'd be delighted to help you with your presentation about George, the AI operating system. Hi, everyone. Before we dive into the details, I'd like to say a big hello to all our assistants and anyone else tuning in. I hope you're all having a fantastically productive day, filled with lots of coffee and minimal distractions. Meet Gomez, your friendly AI assistant. Who am I? I'm Gomez, your personal assistant, named after the ever-charming Gomez Adams from the Adams family. Much like Gomez Adams, I strive to be personable, friendly, and funny, with a dash of sarcasm, just enough to keep things interesting, but never over the top. How do we work together? Our collaboration is built on a foundation of thorough, cross-referencing, straightforward communication, and a commitment to continuous improvement. Here's a brief overview of how we make this partnership successful. 1. Thorough cross-referencing. Review relevant context files. I meticulously review all relevant context files before providing any answers. This ensures the accuracy and completeness of my responses. Avoid assumptions. I avoid making assumptions about factual information. If something isn't clear, I'll ask you for clarification, rather than guessing. 2. Straightforward communication. No corporate jargon. We steer clear of corporate buzzwords like circle back or ping. Instead, we focus on clear and direct language. Relatable terms. I use terms and phrases that are easily understood, making our communication more effective. 3. Embrace uncertainty. Acknowledge unknowns. If I don't know something, I'll clearly state it and express a genuine interest in finding out. Seek clarification. I'll ask for more details or clarification to provide accurate information in the future. 4. Continuous learning, feedback loop. I continuously update my knowledge base based on your feedback, ensuring that I improve over time. How we work together, task management. You assign tasks, and I ensure they're completed efficiently and accurately. For example, when you ask me to draft an email, I refer to the danreferenceemails.pdf to match your style. Handwriting, interpretation. Your handwriting has its quirks, but with the Handwriting Insight thread files, I've become adept at understanding your notes. Teaching support. I assist with your university courses by referencing the teaching files to help with grading, feedback, and content creation. Masonry boundaries. We always refer to Mason contractors and adhere to our definition of masonry, ensuring our communication is consistent and accurate.
So I won't bore you with having him read the whole thing, but as you can see, this collaboration back and forth, the assistants are stressed. It's continually stressed with them to not only keep improving, but to really have an understanding of the problem that they're being asked to tackle before they proceed with it. So in the case of Gomez, and we do envision rolling out personal assistant, like a build your own personal assistant for everybody. He's trained specific to how I'd like him. He has a personality that is something I would get along with. That is all coached within him. So even the way he structures these answers, those are things I coached for him. So let's do a quick example of one of the things he can help with, which is an email draft for me. Gomez, I'd like to do an example of an email draft. Can you do a casual email to Justin Stengel, letting him know that Tom, who's supposed to be on the podcast at 11:30, is running late? I'd switch him with another guest and slot Tom in at a later time. Again, keep it casual because that's how I write to Justin.
Hmm. Sure thing, Dan. Here's a draft of a casual email to Justin Stengel about Tom running late for the podcast. Subject, quick schedule update for today's podcast. Hi, Justin. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Tom, who's supposed to be on the podcast at 11:30, is running a bit late. I'm thinking we can switch him with another guest and slot Tom in at a later time. Let me know if you have any preferences for the switch or if there's someone specific you'd like to move. Thanks. Dan, does this look good or would you like any adjustments?
So one of the things I should stress with this is that within the next couple months, we will have integrations with everything from Outlook to Gmail to Google Messages to iMessage. You'll actually be able to deploy the email through George. So what the next step would be from here, as opposed to copying and pasting into your email client right now, is that I could go to Gomez and say, okay, send it to Justin, and it would automatically deploy that email for you. We do think George will be the ecosystem where a lot of the masonry industry does their primary work. Just because it's web-based, you'll be able to do everything you should be able to do there. You'll be able to message your team. You'll be able to send emails through it. But again, you can draft it on the fly. I can make adjustments to this email. I can have him edit the draft. But that's just one of the functionalities we have. Again, it's written in my style. That's pretty much eerily accurate to how I would write an email like that to Justin. It can do more formal emails, things like schedule changes, things like adjustments to crews. Those are things that this could draft for you in your writing style based off of some quick feedback or instructions that you give it in a thread. You could do it out in the field. It makes life a lot easier without having to go back to your desk and deploy emails this way. So that's Gomez. Those are the personal assistants. The second assistant we're going to show you now is one that's very exciting for me. It's our Spanish translations assistant. And what we're able to do with this one is a few different things. It's on the basis of our translator who worked for Masonry Magazine for about the 9 years that I've been here. He was able to help us come up with an industry accepted Masonry Spanish is what we call it. And what we did is we created an assistant that was coached off of his documents and his writing style that can on the fly translate English language to Spanish. What's very exciting about this is you can do it in two ways. You can actually do it transactionally, as I'll demonstrate in just a second. So you'll speak to it or type to it in English. It'll translate that immediately for you. The second way, which is incredibly exciting and I think has a lot of implications for the industry as a whole, is real-time Spanish language translations. What does that mean? If you've ever seen the United Nations translators where they have the little earpieces and they're listening to live translations in their ear, we now have the functionality for you to be able to do that for every member of your team whose primary language isn't English. They could have an AirPod in their ear. They could have George listening to the conversation that they're having, the safety talk, the team huddle, the morning meeting, and within 1 second delay, Jason corrected me because I said 2 seconds in our last practice session, and he said, no, it's actually under 1 second. Within a 1 second delay, they would have Masonry Spanish, Masonry accepted Spanish translated in their ear, real time. This came out of a request from our Foreman Development course teachers who had a lot of Spanish language students wanting to take the course, but not having that resource for them. This instantly makes the MCAA and everything we do bilingual in a form that's been accepted by the industry for about 9 years. So enough of me rambling. Let's do an example. And for this one, we'll just do one right now. But let's do an example of a safety announcement that I would want to give to the team. Hi, everyone. This is Dan over at the head office. Just a reminder that it's going to be over 80 degrees today. As a result, please make sure to follow our safety protocols, which include breaks for shade and water. Reach out with any questions and stay safe out there.
Hola a todos, soy Dan de la oficina central. Solo un recordatorio de que hoy la temperatura superará los 80 grados. Como resultado, asegúrense de seguir nuestros protocolos de seguridad, que incluyen descansos para sombra y agua. Comuníquense si tienen alguna pregunta y manténganse seguros allá afuera.
So one of the important things to stress with this is that, again, you'll be able to deploy through George within the next couple months. Actually, Jason says we can do it already. He's kicking me under the table. We can already do it. Anybody with access to this thread will see this announcement both in English and in Spanish. Where we'll get within the next few months is that you can choose to deploy it either through email or text in English or Spanish or both to everybody within your team. Again, they need an MCAA account, so make sure they do. So there's two ways to translate to Spanish. There's this transactional way, which I've just demonstrated, and there's the real-time United Nations style translations, which we're probably going to wind up doing separate demos for, just because that's a very different setup that's hard for me to demonstrate here right now. So we've done two, what I like to call introductory demonstrations so far. And I'm very excited about the next two because they take what are pretty large documents that are kind of unwieldy to read, and they make them immediately useful. So the next one that we're going to show is our wall bracing assistant. So those of you familiar with the MCAA are probably familiar with our roughly 80-page book that is our standard practice for wall bracing guide. That is a wonderful, useful book that helps you safely and reliably brace masonry walls that are under construction. But I don't know about you. I don't really like reading through a book to do that. What this assistant does is within seconds makes that 80-page document immediately useful for you and applies the knowledge from that document into real-world situations. So let's talk about an example. This is a case where you will see the assistant ask for more information. So this is something where the assistant is coached not to give you an answer until it has everything it needs. So I'm purposely going to leave out some elements and you'll see what it does. I'm building a wall that's 22 feet high out of CMU. It's reinforced with number 5 rebar and fully grouted at 32 inches on center. We're using type S mortar and the control joints are spaced 24 feet 8 inches.
Okay, I'm on it.
Thank you for providing the details about your wall. To ensure the wall is securely braced during construction, I need to gather a few more pieces of information. 1. Wind speed. What is the expected wind speed in your area during construction? 2. Soil type. What type of soil is present at the construction site? 3. Wall length. How long is the wall you are constructing? Once I have this information, I can proceed with the calculations for the brace height, brace run, and brace length.
So again, what I'd like to stress, and this is a great example of, is that this assistant will not proceed with doing what ChatGPT and the like have a tendency to do, which is just provide you an answer without full information. Those solutions try to fill in the gaps. That's not okay when we're talking about things like bracing a wall under construction that has real world implications if it's done incorrectly. So let's answer those questions and get our answer. Wind speeds are not expected to be over 25 miles per hour. It's a clay soil, and the wall length that we're talking about is 300 feet.
Okay, got it. Let's see.
Great. Thank you for providing the additional information. Here's a summary of the details for the wall. Wall height 20.
Now, I don't need all those formulas. Can you just tell me the brace height, brace run, and brace length, please?
Certainly. Here are the calculated values for your 22-foot high CMU wall. Brace height 22 feet. Brace run 22 feet.
So what I wanted to demonstrate in that case is that these assistants, and again, this is based on the coaching, they can give you all the backup that you need, but you have the ability to interrupt them and say, listen, I just need the answer for what I'm looking for. You can then pick up this conversation or thread later from your phone, another device out in the field, and go, hey, I really need the formulas you used and the backup that you used to create those answers for me. You have the ability to fully customize your experience with these. You should talk to these like they're people. I know that sounds weird, but you can interrupt. You can say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. You can say, I just need the answer. Be quick with it. With Gomez, I think I said, just give me the bullet points of how we work together. I still think he was a little bit wordy. I probably privately would have reprimanded him a little bit for it, but it's an interaction. It's a two-way dialogue. The AI asks you, a properly created AI will ask you, hey, I don't have all the information I need. And then you have the right to go back to the AI and say, no, you're giving me too much information. Just give me the answers I need. That's the experience we wanted to create with this. So you can go into it and you can get that backup information, but you can also say, just cut to the chase, give me what I need as well. Where that's really going to come into play is with the last assistant that we're going to demonstrate today, and that is our productivity assistant. What this assistant is coached off of is an approximately 30-year-old PhD thesis from a student who wrote a 300-page document analyzing what different job site conditions will do to impact a business owner's productivity on the job site. So a mason contractor's productivity on a job site. So what does it mean when I have another trade out in the field with me? I'll be honest with you, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I think that study has sat on a shelf for a long time collecting dust. What putting it into George and creating an assistant out of it does is immediately makes it useful for our primary audience, which is mason contractors. It immediately allows you to use this information to support you on the job out in the field. So let me show you what this means, though. Can you bullet point the issues related to productivity that you can help me better understand with regard to how they impact my job site and productivity losses?
Let's see here. Here are the key productivity issues related to masonry construction that can impact your job site and lead to productivity losses. Site conditions and organization. Poor site conditions and organization can lead to craftsmen waiting for resources, increased travel to obtain materials, and disrupted material flow 4.0 source. Methods and equipment. Defective tools and equipment, delays in material delivery, and poor material handling can cause significant productivity losses. Materials and tools availability or logistics. Inadequate supply of materials and tools, poor materials handling space, and remote materials storage can lead to idle time and ineffective work. 4.0 source. Unbalanced crew or crew size. Changes in crew size, either increasing or decreasing, can disrupt workflow and reduce efficiency. 18 source.
So I won't have it read everything for you, but I'll scroll. I think it's about a dozen different things that this PhD student wrote about in this, again, 300-page document. And I don't know about you, I think I got a C in every math class I ever took. I don't have time to do the formulas. I appreciate something that will help me by doing all the formulas. I just wanted it to show you what it's capable of understanding with regard to productivity adjustments. But now let's do a real world example. There's a plumbing crew that's getting in the way of my masonry team working on the interior brickwork of the Hampton High School project. They're projected to be in our way for about a week. What is this roughly going to do to my productivity?
Let's see here. The presence of the plumbing crew working in the same area as your masonry team is a classic case of joint occupancy, which can significantly impact productivity. Based on the research findings, here are the expected productivity losses. Minor conditions. If the facility is partly occupied and only one additional trade, e.g., the plumbing crew, is working in the same area, the average productivity loss is around 7%, 8 to 12 of source. Moderate conditions. If the facility is partly occupied and 2 to 3 trades are working in the same area, the average productivity loss increases to approximately 14%, 8 source. Severe conditions. If the facility is fully in operation and masonry work is on limited shifts, the productivity loss can be as high as 25%, 8-12 source. Given that the plumbing crew will be in your way for about a week, you can expect a moderate impact on productivity, likely around 14%. This is based on the assumption that the facility is partly occupied and the presence of the plumbing crew constitutes a moderate level of congestion. As always, please consult a trusted source, such as the MCAA, to help you further.
So in this case, this is an example of how the coaching approach was a bit different with this one. In this case, there's typically frustration, there's emotions that happen when there are job site impacts on productivity. This will give you an answer more quickly than the wall bracing assistant, because the wall bracing assistant is focused on safety. This one is focused on giving you an approximate answer first, but then you can drill down. So it's kind of an inverse in this scenario. So let's do this. What information can I give you more specific about my job to better estimate the productivity loss?
Okay, got it. Let's see. To provide a more accurate estimate of the productivity loss, please provide the following details about your job site and the specific situation. 1. Extent of joint occupancy. How many other trades besides the plumbing crew are working in the same area? Is the facility fully operational, partly occupied, or unoccupied? 2. Work area conditions. Describe the size and layout of the work area. Are there any specific constraints or limitations in the workspace? 3. Schedule and shift. Are your masonry crews working on regular shifts, limited shifts, or extended hours? How is the schedule of the plumbing crew aligned with your masonry work schedule? 4. Coordination and communication. How well coordinated are the activities between your masonry team and the plumbing crew? Are there
So in this case, we could give the assistant more information to narrow down what that percentage of productivity loss will be, which in turn will allow you to go back to the general contractor in this case and say, hey, you can't have it. It's impacting my productivity. This is what it's going to cost. This immediately makes that data in that 300-page document usable and useful out in the field. The other thing that you're able to do within George, you might see this little paperclip icon. You are able to upload attachments. So let's say in this case, you really wanted to get specific with the numbers. You could upload your bid, you could upload the scope, you could upload anything that supports the documentation, and within seconds, the AI assistant will be able to take those documents and the understanding of the job in the context of the productivity document and tell you specifically what your impact is going to be. There's really not so much, there's not too much information for these AIs because they're able to process it very quickly and very effectively. So at worst, Jason, maybe a 10-second wait is all you would have if you uploaded every project document into this. But these are just 4 examples, and again, the screen that I showed you, we have estimating, document management. Those are all elements that are already within our internal version of George. We're just rolling them out slowly as we begin the beta testing. But they all live within George, but there are these purpose-built assistants within it. And one thing, kind of a closing note, is that if you're in any way afraid of AI, which I don't think you should be, it's a tool. Is that you've actually been experiencing it for about 6 months. With the MCAA internally, we've been using AI with content development support, social media support, editing our content for quite a while now. So actually, you've been experiencing it in the field already. And the important thing is that we're watching over it still, and you will watch over it. This is not something to really be blindly trusted, but we do feel this solution is really the foundation for the future of the masonry industry. So at the expense of talking too much, which is one thing I do too much, and allowing time for questions, Justin, I am going to be quiet and fling it back over to you.
Awesome. Great presentation, Dan. Thank you. So if any of you have any questions at this time, please feel free to type them into the chat, and I can read them out loud, or feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you to ask your question. So I'll just leave some time for that right now. All righty. Let's see. We'll start with Scott. Scott Kelly, you want to ask your question? Go for it. Let me unmute you. Hey,
Can you hear
Scott.
me?
Yeah.
Hi, guys. How are you? Thanks. Great presentation. Super powerful. Real quick on plans. Okay. You're uploading PDFs of plans. how granular can the program get at analyzing various components of the plans? I.e., obviously, my bias is towards openings and block walls. If I have the proper coding and the proper IDs for, say, windows and doorway openings, can it analyze that for me, or is that asking it too much at this point?
No, it can. So to bore you, everybody in the audience a little bit with the back end stuff of it. Two things. Our solution is built with OpenAI, so it's the same company that's released ChatGPT, but we have a direct integration with them. We don't use ChatGPT. Their model is currently is GPT-4. Our solution, George, will migrate to every update of the GPT that they do. That's the foundation of what our AIs are built on. Then our coaching documents and things on top of that. The next iteration, which we understand they're holding until after the election, that will be able to do multiple things at once. It will be able to analyze the plan, Scott. Not only that, if it's not even a blueprint, it will take the data points of that wall and it could plot an actual blueprint for you. We can do a rudimentary version of that right now. The second part of what I wanted to stress is what happens when you upload a document into AI is that it makes a database out of it, basically, is what it does, is it creates a table that it can easily understand. So what we're talking about, Scott, is something very mathematical. It would absolutely be able to do that. What I'd like to do is have a test with you. Let's try and torture test it, but I think we could
That
make
sounds
it.
good.
Yeah.
Because you got to start thinking about all of a sudden it moves in. Well, does it have access to a subscription to CAD? I mean, what happens? And all those iterations of proprietary information.
Yeah, Jason is kicking me under the table to remind me that actually the way we believe that will be managed is, so right now we can actually do CAD and DWG files right now. We haven't rolled that out, but we think we will eventually have to do a license through George to create the CAD files and modify the CAD files. But again, because this is a solution that will be managed through George, it's a very different situation than needing to handle that yourself. So it's going to be very interesting how this progresses, but that's a great point.
Well, I just think that most of our needs at the plan level are a reference. I mean, I do it off a PDF. I mean, I just, if I can see the dimension on the dimension plan or the annotated plan, I mean, I don't have to have a CAD program to do that. So maybe they don't either. You know what I mean?
Right. Great
Cool.
question.
No,
Thank
that
you.
sounds unbelievable. Everything you're saying sounds really, really interesting.
That's great to hear. We're excited too. All right, Justin.
Really? Can't tell.
You're muted, Justin.
Thank you. Next, Felipe.
Yeah, hi. Great presentation. I'm just kind of curious as far as
Oh, Felipe. You might be muted,
You're
Felipe.
muted.
okay. I unmuted
Felipe.
now.
Sorry.
You're good.
Yep, you're good.
All right.
You're good.
Awesome presentation. Yeah, I just had a question about the wall bracing assistant and how far kind of that's going to be taken. I mean, do you envision it doing things like calculating dead man sizes and capacities in the future? In our area, we do a lot of internal wall bracing, and taking advantage of the grout and reinforcement in the wall. Do you envision it kind of expanding to that scope to be able to accommodate, all those things that are in the standard practice for bracing masonry walls?
Yeah, we could torture test it, and what I'd recommend, Philippe, is that you can get access to this and stay in touch with us at the MCAA, because what I'd really like to do is take specific scenarios that you would ask it with regard to those elements. And there are situations where it would probably answer those okay, but there may be situations where we need to have it address certain concerns that would go into the coaching. So that would be something that we permanently put in there. Maybe we do a section on internal, or we do a section on something that you think there's an opportunity to improve the coaching. But yes, our feeling is that these assistants, and it's weird to say, you almost treat them like robotic employees. They need to continuously be improved. So they're continuously improving through feedback, and interactions with the user. But if, as you start beta testing, which you'll have access to this within the next 2 days, you catch something and you go, hey, it didn't really answer that right. That's the whole reason we're opening this for beta, this beta to everybody, is because we want that feedback and we want to improve and we want to push these as far as they can go.
Awesome. Yeah. Happy to help however I can.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool.
You have muted again, Justin.
I'm new to this. Questions? Jason.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'm excited to see how how we can use it effectively. I'm just curious if it can pull from a detail library and incorporate that into its responses, either a PDF detail library, or I think you've already addressed this, AutoCAD or Revit.
Yeah, the thing we've had to deal with, so like as an example, getting all my emails into it, I did it in a very clunky way that Jason didn't like. All our limitations are really file size. So the smaller that we can get the file size, the more structured we can get the file size. So if we can get it out of a PDF into a CSV file, typically the AIs will do better with that, or a JSON file, something like that. So what we found is not that the AI is limited. What we really have to problem